and raise a hullabaloo at the ball game today.
Hey everybody, it's me, Rick Acosta, the Dodger Card Collector, coming to you with another video. Today is Sunday, August 18th, and I'm getting ready to watch the Dodgers play the Cardinals, the third game of a three-game series. My original plan, I wasn't going to make a video. I figured I didn't have much to talk about, and all of a sudden I was talking to my buddy Eric yesterday, a childhood friend of mine, Eric, who I bring up in a lot of my talks. And we were talking yesterday. I'm in the process of basically I have, I would say, several hundred 1970s commons that are really of no value. And I was like, oh, I'm gonna sell these just because they're just taking up space in my closet. And he jokingly made a remark, you don't have the Series 5 1973 Topps checklist, do you? And I laughed because he and I have had this conversation off and on for over a year, maybe even 2 years at this point. And it got me thinking, the way we just started talking about the cost just of this one card. It's the final card, or it's the last card, the last checklist of the 1973 Topps set. And I remember I paid less than $30 for it several years ago. And I don't think much about price once I'm done buying a card. But he was telling me a couple of years ago it was this much. So I finally asked him, what's one going for now? And he said he hadn't looked in a while. The last one he looked for was $70. And I just kind of went, whoa. Then while we're sitting there texting, chatting back and forth, all of a sudden he goes, look at this one. This one was currently on eBay for $94. And I was like, oh, wow. So whenever we talk about this one particular card, which my friend Eric lovingly will say, this is the 1973 Series 5 Top checklist. This is like the 1973 version of the 1952 Topps Eddie Mathews card. It's hard to find, and people want a lot of money when it's available. Now, some of you might say, oh, $94 isn't much. But when you're talking about a checklist from a 1970s set, you're like, oh, really? I have to pay this? So, but whenever we talk about this subject, it always brings me back to 1973 was the first set I ever worked on. It's the first set I ever bought wax packs for. First set I ever built as a child, never finished. First set I did build as an adult. And I remember, I think I finished it in the early 2000s. And for me, that was a big achievement. It was just finally like, wow, I finally finished this 1973 set. And I know there's a lot of people out there that aren't really big fans of that set. They complain a lot about the photography. I'm not one of those. I actually think some of those, and I'll show you some cards here in a moment. I actually think the 1973 Steve Garvey card is pretty cool. I'm going to get his name wrong. I want to say his name is Luis Alvarado of the White Sox. It looks like he's playing baseball in a park. I like that card. Some of these guys look like they're a million miles away in their shots. I think like Boots Day. I'm okay with it. I really like the photography of the 1973 Topps set. So it's a great set. It's the last set that was released in series. And it's just got a lot of great cards in there. And I thought, you know what? I've never done this before. I'm going to show off my 1973 Topps set along with the 1973 Topps Blue checklist inserts that came in. So let's cut the crap. I'm going to turn the camera around. We're going to take a look at some baseball cards. All right, so for 1973 Topps, I have no notes written down. I didn't look any information up. I'm just going to go on memory and see if I have any stories to tell you from particular cards that I bought. Now, first of all, I'll start off with this series has 660 cards, and there were 5 different series. The first cards that we're looking at are some of the first cards I ever owned. Guys like Richie Hebner, John Milner, Johnny Oates. This card number 1, the all-time home run leaders, I never got that as a kid. I think I finally bought that as an adult. And for me, in 1973, having a card with Babe Ruth on it, I immediately, even though I was 8 years old, I thought, oh my God, this card's valuable. I don't know how that got stuck in my head, but that's still a great card to this day. Babe Ruth, Hank Aaron, and Willie Mays. So as we start on Series 1, you see Hall of Famer Don Sutton. I'm pointing out Don Zimmer, the manager of the Padres, just because the manager cards have a lot of variations. I'm not a master set builder, but I believe each manager card has different shaded backgrounds. There's this color, and then there's like an orange background. And like I said, I'm not a master set builder on this set, so that's why I didn't do it. Tim Foley. The only reason I'm bringing up Tim Foley was there used to be a company. It might have been Renata Galasso. It was in the Sporting News to sell the advertisement to sell the 1973 top set would use the Tim Foley card, and that's my memory of that back then. Pittsburgh Pirates. Roberto Clemente's in that photo, and here's Fred Norman. Here's Willie Davis. I still don't know what's happening in this photo, but there's Willie Davis. And let's see, Reggie Smith, Mike Epstein. Everybody in America is in this photo, and there's barely Ellie Rodriguez. But like I said, I love these shots. The last Roberto Clemente card, the last one. I did own that as a kid. I don't know what I did with it, but I did own it at one point. It's a good-looking card. I don't think Clemente has one bad card. Here's checklist number 1. Of checklist 1 through 132. I remember John Matlack. He was like Tom Seaver. After Tom Seaver and Jerry Koosman, there was John Matlack. Steve Yeager. The reason this card is popular for Dodger fans, this is his rookie card, and he wasn't wearing his number 7 at this point. He was still wearing number 41. Then we get the league leaders cards, where you get Hall of Famers or almost Hall of Famers like Dick Allen. These are still really good looking ones. This one I love. Steve Carlson, Nolan Ryan. Those are great cards. Also in 1973, we get a look at the Atlanta Braves new uniforms that they began wearing in 1972. They got rid of the pinstripes and went to these fancy 70s looking uniforms, which as a kid I loved. I just thought I thought the Braves caps were the coolest. I used to use Ron Reed as a trivia piece growing up. That was, who was the winning pitcher the night Henry Aaron hit his 715th home run? It's Ron Reed. I still don't know if that's true. I should look it up, but I was told that. Let's see. Ed Brinkman was one of the first cards I remember buying. My very first packs. I bought like 5 to 8 packs the first day. My mother gave me money, and for some reason that day went and bought like several packs. Whitey Lockman, the manager of the Cubs. He's got some somewhat famous coaches here. Ernie Banks, Pete Reiser, Dodger fame. Raleigh Fingers, Brooks Robinson. I think that's card number 1. No, that's not card number 100. Let's see. I'm getting close to card number 100. Willie Montanez. Card number 100 is Hank Aaron. How did I forget that? So there's Hank Aaron playing first base. And I knew Hank Aaron as a first baseman. I didn't know him as a shortstop or an outfielder. I knew him as a first baseman, and then later as a DH. Here's a fun card. Dave Nelson, way there, but there's an A's pitcher and an A's infielder. Ralph Houck, the manager. He's got Elston Howard as one of his coaches at this point. Dave Rader. This is this is the 3rd year that Topps is using action photos. Pete Rose card is spectacular. Taken at the old Candlestick Park with the artificial turf. And let's see. Earl Weaver. Thurman Munson, one of my favorite cards from that era. That's just a great looking card. My favorite card, Bobby Bonds. That's still one of my favorite cards. You guys know that. I've told you that a million times. Here's Wes Parker along with a Philly player and Lee Lacy in his card. So we got the wide angle camera going that day. Sal Bando, the captain of the Oakland A's. Jim Palmer. We're now in Series 2. Series 2 is card numbers 133 to 264. There's Harmon Killebrew. That's probably, yeah, no, he's still got Killebrew still got 2 more cards after that. Frank Robinson on the Angels, but he's in a Dodger uniform. The Dodger logo has been whited out. That one's kind of a bummer. I would have liked him on the Dodgers, but oh well. Ferguson Jenkins. Those Chicago Road uniforms were different back then. Jimmy Wynn, one of my favorite players. The Bull, Greg Lazinski. Bob Gibson, some young kid named Carlton Fisk. And then we had these postseason cards. So we had one for the American League Championship Series, one for the National League Championship Series. Bob Moose had just thrown a wild pitch. George Foster came running in from third base with Hal McRae jumping up and down, which we don't see in this card. And then we saw the beginning of the A's dynasty, of the 70s A's dynasty. Tennis the Menace. This was one of my favorite cards. Tennis singles in the 9th. John Blue Moon Odom out at the plate. I always thought he was safe. It's probably because I didn't like the Reds even back then. Here's the Steve Garvey card I mentioned. There's Wes Parker waiting to greet Steve Garvey. But I just love that card. Nolan Ryan, Al Oliver. We're still in Series 2. I like this card. Bill Parsons at the old county stadium for the Brewers in Milwaukee. I like those Brewers uniforms. They weren't like the light blue that they had the first year when they came over from Seattle. So those are just good looking uniforms. Another wide angle shot. Tito Fuentes, the second baseman for the Giants. Jim Catfish Hunter. Loved those A's uniforms. They just looked so cool back then. Bobby Mercer. Yaz. Let's see. This card, Reggie Jackson, I get the complaints. They should have taken a better photo of him for this set. Especially because the A's weren't wearing those uniforms anymore. And then we have the end of Series 2 and the beginning of Series 3, which is 265 to 396. There's Chris Spire. One thing we're also starting to see at this point is Topps is no longer just taking photographs at Shea Stadium and Yankee Stadium. We're seeing photos of Candlestick Stadium in San Francisco, or Candlestick Park in San Francisco, where the A's play. There are photos at Dodger Stadium. There are photos of spring training in Florida. So it's not just the Yankee Stadium, Shea Stadium domination anymore in regards to photographs. Bob Oliver with Bert Campaneris. Cesar Cedeno. When I was a kid, Leo DeRocher, who was the manager of the Astros, used to say that he was as good as Willie Mays. And for a while there, he was good. Just didn't last. Speaking of Willie Mays, there he is. In his last official card on a Topps card, he did appear in the 1974 set in the World Series. There's Boots Day. I brought him up earlier. You can barely see him in there. Lou Brock. Boog Powell. He just celebrated his 83rd birthday yesterday. And then we've got Series 3 checklist. Freddie Patek. I'm actually taller than Freddie Patek. Freddie's 5'4". I'm not much taller. Just a couple of inches probably. Kansas City Royals. Tom Seaver. Boyhood photos of the stars. This was a big thing in 72 and 73. Guys like Gaylord Perry. Don Stanhouse before he grew an afro and the mustache for the Orioles. Joe Rudy. That's not Joe Rudy in the middle. That's Gene Tennis. That's one of the Topps errors of that set. Bert Hooton, Bill Buckner, who was playing first base. This would be the year the Dodgers realized they needed to get Steve Garvey into the somewhere in a position, and he wasn't a good third baseman. That's where he was playing. He was playing second base. They said, can you play first base? Walter Olson asked him if he could play first base. He lied and said yes. Because of that, they moved Bill Buckner to left field, where he did end up winning a Gold Glove out there in 1974. Willie Stargell, Frank Duffy, Gene Mauch. We're wrapping up Series 3 here. Rich Hand. This card and the Vita Blue card are very similar, and if I see the Vita Blue, I'll stop. I was a big fan of Dave Cash growing up. Eventually when he got traded to the Phillies. Gaylord Perry's first card, I think that's 4 on the Indians. Or no, maybe a second card on the Indians. I think that's card number 400, yeah. So we are now in series number 4. Paul Lindblad, Willie McCovey, Johnny Bench, that's a great card. Some good action shots here. Bobby Grich. Let's see. Here's the Vita Blue. Looks like it was taken at the same photo session as the Rich Hand card. That's a great Vita Blue card. Let's see. Glenn Beckert, starting second baseman for the Cubs. Danny Thompson. I don't know if he had another card after this. He passed away of leukemia in the mid-70s. Joe Torre. Ken Aspromonte, manager of the Cleveland Indians. If you notice, one of his coaches is Mr. Warren Spahn. More checklists for Series 4. One of the rare times the Chicago Cubs took a team photo back then for a baseball card. The Chicago Cubs team photo cards, look them up over the years. They tend to put individual heads on the card of each player, as opposed to putting a team photo up there. So here's the Cubs. One of my favorite cards, Bill Freehan, the catcher for the Detroit Tigers. Another good card, Tom Griffin. First designated hitter, Ron Blomberg. Ron Blomberg is recognized as the first designated hitter. Now these I thought were a big deal. When I was a kid, I thought these were a big deal. Like, oh my God, Ty Cobb. Lou Gehrig, Babe Ruth, and more Ty Cobb, more Walter Johnson. In some cases, if this little subset, and in 1976, there's some type of Sporting News all-time team. These are the only Babe Ruth cards, Walter Johnson cards, Cy Young cards I own. They don't count, but they were fun to have, and they're just funny to chuckle about. You know, I could say, yeah, I have a Walter Johnson card. Nah, that's not legit. Let's see, Danny Ozark, Norm Cash. We're still working our way here through Series 5. Let's see. Greg Nettles in a terribly airbrushed card. Got the world champion Oakland A's. Bobby Valentine. That's technically him in a Dodger uniform. They Topps did some pretty good artwork there to make it look like he was on the Angels. By the way, the A's card is number 500. Amos Otis, in the 70s, he was one of the better center fielders. Does not get talked about much these days. Let's see. Mel Stottlemyre, old Yankee Stadium in the background. I think the Yankees had 1 year left at the old Yankee Stadium before the renovation started. Or 73 might have been the last year. I think 73 is the last year. Jim Fregosi. Jim Cott, check that out. He's hitting. He's hitting. There's Jim Cott in his batting stance. Good looking cards here. This is a famous card, Pat Corrales. I think that's Fergie Jenkins that plowed into him that day. I've seen a few videos posted on YouTube about it. And we've entered our last series, which is card numbers 529 to 660. This is the last series. I do remember these cards did make it out west because I did pull some of these cards from PAX as a kid. Love this Davey Concepcion card. Same thing with the Yankees team photo. Because sometimes you hear in the 60s how certain cards never even made it out west in regards to the high numbers. I can attest that these 1973 cards did make it out. And I did own some. Frank Howard. This set's only 660, so it's not one of those massively huge sets. I mean, the previous year, 1972, was 787 cards. I think 71 is 752 cards, and 1970, 720. So there was a dramatic reduction here. Walter Alston, his new coach, Tommy Lasorda. Love the Doc Ellis card taken over at Candlestick Park. Bob Didier. I just love the photos of these. Love the action shots. Joe Pepitone now on the Cubs. Here's the infamous checklist that inspired this video. That card's pretty hard to get. When it is, it's pretty expensive. And when we're set building, me personally, I always want my checklists unmarked. That's for sure. This Boston Red Sox card wasn't cheap. I do remember that. Then we got some rookies. Here's where the Dodgers really started taking advantage. Where we start seeing a change here. Guys like Tom Pashork and Davey Lopes, Charlie Huff, Gary Matthews on the Giants, Enos Cabell on the Orioles, but he'd end up on the Astros. Here's the big card. That's the Mike Schmidt rookie, along with Ron Cey. That's his second rookie card, Ron Cey. But this is the big card from the 1973 top set. I have a graded card. All these cards, this is probably one of the only, no, all of my 70 sets, all my cards are ungraded. And in some cases, I chose to buy graded cards as duplicates just to have. Here's Leo DeRocher. Here's the card I mentioned at the beginning, Luis Alvarado. He's like, there's cars in the background and just looks like two guys playing at a park. I always like that Dick Selma card, Willie Crawford. We're getting near the end here. That Dick Bosman card, that was also taken in Oakland. Del Crandall. Clay Kirby, I like those Padres uniforms. I never saw them before. John Ellis with his logo, with his team logo, team name, all airbrushed out. And the very last card is Fred Sherman. Then what we see here are these 1973 Topps team checklists. These are blue checklists. These were inserted, I believe, into high numbers. I did not ever see these as a child. And I bought a lot of wax. If I'm an authority on any type of wax, it would be from 1973 and 1974 because I bought a lot of wax. Never saw these. They're in alphabetical order. They look similar to what we would see more commonly in 1974. In 1974 had the red borders. These have blue borders, but we see team name and players' autographs. Oh, as a child, I thought this was amazing. Then in the back, you get the checklists. And we would just go in order here. These weren't difficult to find, but I found a lot of them marked. So I think these are all unmarked. Phillies, Pirates, Padres. And that's everybody. Those are all of them. And then let me show you while we're sitting here. Like I said, 660 cards total. And then the checklists, the blue checklists are 24 cards. You do not need the 24 team checklist cards to consider the 63 set or the 73 set complete. 73 sets complete with 660. Some other cards that I own graded, only two of them. Bobby Bonds. I bought this because it's my favorite card, one of my favorite cards in the whole wide world. Willie Stargell's right there, covering out first base. And then my last card, which I almost just dropped, I decided I did have the ungraded version in my binder, but I wanted a Mike Schmidt rookie for my display case. So I bought an extra one here. And I got it at a good price a long time ago. You know, those of you guys that bought cards a long time ago will know that things were a lot cheaper then than they were now. I don't know if I would be buying a Mike Schmidt 5 right now. But this is a great card. It's a great set. It remains, honestly, probably my favorite set just because, it, like I said, first set I worked on. So many memories of childhood and friends and Little League. And when it was done, I was pretty happy. And it's probably one of the later one of the last sets I would ever get rid of if I had to do something like that. So hopefully I never will. But if you stuck around this long, you guys, thanks so much for hanging out. And we'll talk to you next time. Take care.
It's a beautiful day for a party.